Okay, I'm going to get started this morning by just welcoming everyone. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Sawadee Krap. Nice to see all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, where each Saturday I get together with students and study the original words of the Buddha and help you guys to understand the teachings. I'll explain to you more about what the Pali Canon and English study group is later. But what we do is we start with meditation. So I'll guide you guys in a meditation session to get started, and then we'll move into our study group and I'll explain to you guys what that is. The way that we do our meditation is we start with some chanting to ease the mind into meditation. These chants that we use are over there on the table. There's a laminated sheet. You're welcome to get one if you like. You'll be able to see the chants that I do. The chanting basically originated from during the lifetime of the Buddha, that they used chanting as a way to commit the teachings to memory, that every 2 weeks the students would come together and recite his teachings word for word in order to be able to remember the teachings. These particular chants I don't think were created by the Buddha, because if you read the English translations, there's a lot of admiration and appreciation and gratitude and respect for the Buddha in these chants. And a Buddha doesn't walk around giving out chants to students and say, hey, chant this to me in order to respect me, because this would be like arrogance and pride. This would be the ego and putting yourself above people and kind of being boastful. So a Buddha wouldn't actually do that. So I think that his students probably created these chants either during his life or after his death, because one of the things that you're doing is you're eliminating discontent feelings. That's the main thing you're doing on this path to enlightenment, is you're eliminating anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings. And your mind is moving to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy, where the mind is permanently in this mental state, where you no longer experience any anger or sadness or frustration or any other discontent feelings. So if you learn from a teacher how to do that and they didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, you might have a lot of respect and gratitude for that person. So I think they probably created these chants either during his life or after his death as a way to show respect and gratitude to him. But as I mentioned, it started out as a way to just commit the teachings to memory, because everything he taught was oral. They didn't write things down during his lifetime because the technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world. So they just recited his teachings every 2 weeks as a way to commit the teachings to their memory and then to be able to practice them. So when we're chanting these chants, it's important to understand that there's nothing mystical or magical here. It's not a rite or ritual or a ceremony or worship. It's not prayer or anything like that. What we use these for today is to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. That you'll develop some awareness of mind and awareness of the breath. You'll start developing concentration and focus. And as you ease into your meditation, you'll get more benefit out of the meditation by doing a little bit of chanting. So if you'd like to chant along as I'm chanting, you're more than welcome to. After the chanting, you're going to hear me come in with some guidance, and I'm going to be guiding you during the meditation to help you guys to understand how to meditate while we're actually meditating. But then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet, and we're just all meditating together. Everyone here at the temple and anyone who's joining us online will just all be meditating together. And then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting as well. And then that's where I'll start today's class. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, the Buddha taught 4 positions to meditate in: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you can learn these different positions at different times, the various courses and retreats that we have. I'll teach you guys these, because your body can't permanently be in the same position all the time. This practice isn't about everybody being in exactly the same position, because it's not actually possible. You need to find what's comfortable for you. And most students are learning when they first get started in the seated position, either sitting on the floor or in a chair. You might be on a bench or a sofa. If you're maybe at home in a wheelchair or something like that, you can really sit however you're comfortable. But I'm going to give you a little bit of guidance here just to kind of help you find what's comfortable for you. If you're sitting on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This kind of softens your seat. And then you might just lightly cross your legs, where if they were real tight, it would impede the circulation. It would make it challenging for you to meditate because you'd feel pain in the body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat, and this gets the hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, so it allows for circulation in the lower body. So you can find whatever's comfortable for you with your lower body. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. But again, it's not about everyone doing it the same way. There's other options here. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you find whatever is comfortable for you. With the upper body, having the sternum up and the shoulders back, it'll keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, and then you can actively train your mind. This is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you would like your mind to be attentive and alert so you can actively train your mind. So having the sternum up and the shoulders back, not only does it keep your mind attentive and alert, but it makes it easier for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, which will keep the mind attentive and alert and make it easy for you to breathe. So again, I'm going to ease into meditation with some chanting, and you guys are welcome to join along, and then I'm going to come back in with the guidance and go forward from there. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakava Potang Mahakavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawap Manusanang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in naturally through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind focused on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะขวาโพตังมหาขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาขวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาขวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโพโตภาควาติ All right, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, once again, I'd like to welcome all of you guys here at the temple. Welcome to Wat Tung Yu. Welcome to everyone online as well who's joining us. As I mentioned, today's the Pali Canon and English study group where we study the original words of the Buddha. And I'm going to explain to you guys what this is. But before I do, I'd like to let you guys know, for those of you guys that are here for the first time at the temple, there's a bathroom in the back of the room, the very last door on the right. You're welcome to get up and use the restroom at any time. We even have restrooms outside the classroom. If you go out to the parking lot, you're going to see signs that take you around to the main temple bathroom. So you're welcome to use those at any time. We have water and other things over here that are provided by our students. You're welcome to help yourself to any refreshments over there on the table and just make yourself at home, make yourself comfortable here. So today is our Pali Canon and English study group. And what we do is we study the words of the Buddha. And oftentimes before students come into this program, they will have already taken some of our foundational classes and courses and retreats. And if you haven't done that, it's okay. You'll learn plenty here today. Sometimes people come here for the first time on Saturdays and they learn plenty during our study group. But I just share this with you because if there's certain things that I share today that you don't quite understand, you're going to have plenty of opportunity to ask questions and, get clarification on that. But there's oftentimes very helpful if you have a nice foundation before you study the original words of the Buddha. Everything that I teach is based on the original words of the Buddha. So whether it's our group learning program on Sundays and Wednesdays or other courses or retreats, it's all based on the original words of the Buddha. And typically what I'm doing in all those other programs and courses and retreats is I'm teaching in a traditional method where I'm kind of teaching for 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then I open up for questions. And then I teach for 15, 20, 30 minutes, and I open up for questions. And I use visual aids to help you guys to be able to learn and understand. But what we do in this program, is we actually study the original words of the Buddha by inviting someone from here at the temple or anybody online who's in Zoom to be able to read the chapter here. This is a chapter. We're actually starting a brand new book today, which is volume 4 of our book series. It's titled Exploring the Path to Enlightenment, and we're going to be exploring these chapters here, starting with chapter 1. And what I do is I invite somebody here to be able to read this chapter. You can see right here just this little bit. That's all there is to read. You've got the original words of the Buddha here. You've got a reference that goes back to the original teachings in the Pali Canon. The Pali Canon is the original teachings of the Buddha. It's in 45 volumes of books that are this large. He's taught for 45 years, from the age of 35 to 80. So this reference here will take you back to that so that you can see what was he talking about before this and what was he talking about after this. Then you've got words from me that are helping you to be able to understand how to integrate this into your day-to-day life. The Buddha teaches very clear, very precise, and very concise, but it helps to have a dedicated practitioner and a dedicated teacher to be able to guide you through, to be able to do the learning that you need to do in order to get to enlightenment. So here, this is a first chapter, and what I would do is invite someone here at the temple or anyone in Zoom to volunteer to read. And if you'd like to read, all you need to do is get a microphone here at the temple. There's one in the white bowl there. There's plenty of them, actually. You can take them back to your seat, and all you do is press the gray button. The lights will come on, and then you hold it up to your chin, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you throughout the live stream as well. And for those of you guys that are online in Zoom, all you need to do is electronically raise your hand, and then unmute your microphone, and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you throughout the live stream as well. And then after somebody reads the chapter, I will share teachings on that for maybe a few minutes, maybe 5 or 10 minutes or so, and then I'll open up to any questions that you guys have related to that chapter. Then we're going to move on to the next chapter. So this is more like a study group, where the other programs and courses I teach are more like a traditional style of learning. This is the only program that I do this in, is this more of a study group method. And then when we get to the question period, if you guys have any questions, if you could also use the microphones as well, because then we'll be able to hear you here and they'll be able to hear you online. If you speak here without a microphone, they won't be able to hear you online. So you can take these microphones back to your seat, because you might have more than one question, or somebody around you might have a question or like to volunteer to read. So if we have microphones sprinkled throughout the room, this will make it really easy for you guys to be able to participate in the class. And then for those of you guys that are in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask questions by putting that into the comment section, or in Zoom, you can raise your hand and unmute your microphone and ask any questions that way as well. So is there anybody who would like to read this first chapter? Yeah, Pat, you'd like to read? Go ahead, sir. You have a mic there? Yeah, I see he's already prepared. Were you a Boy Scout?
No.
No?
A small amount of existence is not praiseworthy. Monks, just as even a small amount of feces is foul-smelling, so too I do not praise even a small amount of existence, even for a mere finger snap. Monks, just as even a small amount of urine is foul-smelling, a small amount of saliva is foul-smelling, a small amount of pus is foul-smelling, a small amount of blood is foul-smelling, so too I do not praise even a small amount of existence, even for a mere finger snap.
Okay, thank you, sir. So the teachings of the Buddha are all based on you learning his teachings, examining them and investigating them. You reflect on his teachings to independently verify them. And then you practice his teachings by integrating them into your life and training your mind. Essentially what the Buddha did is he discovered these 10 individual pollutions that are in your mind, that as long as these pollutions are in your mind, you're going to experience anger and sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment. All these feelings and others are being experienced because of certain things that are going on in your own mind. You might think that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated, but what you'll learn through the teachings of the Buddha in a way that you can independently verify is that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And by you understanding this, you can actually train your mind using the tools and techniques that he taught to uproot these causes and conditions in the mind that are producing these feelings. And you can get to the point where you're only experiencing peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy. You'll just always be happy, cheerful, bright, radiant. You'll notice that your mind becomes focused, concentrated. You'll have clarity and deep memory, because with these pollutions out of the mind, your mind will perform more optimally. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships will really blossom. They'll be at ease, that you won't be bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships any longer. Because if that's what you're putting out, that's what's coming back to you. As long as you're being bitter and harsh and hostile in your relationships, people are going to be that way with you. You'll get to the point where you've uprooted these pollutions, that you're not even in a bad mood anymore, that you're just always in a good mood. And this comes through training of the mind. Nothing in the teachings of the Buddha is based in belief. So you're not believing a bunch of things and then hoping something good happens when you die. That's not the way his teachings work. You're actually learning, investigating, and examining his teachings. You're reflecting on them to independently verify whether they're true or they're false. And then you're practicing his teachings, integrating these tools and techniques into your life and creating this better way of life for yourself. There isn't these beliefs, there isn't rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship. If you've seen these things associated with the teachings of the Buddha, this isn't actually the teachings of the Buddha. Not everybody studies with the original words of the Buddha. So you'll see people out in the world that are maybe considering what they're doing Buddhist, but they haven't actually studied with the original words, so they don't realize that those things aren't actually part of the teachings of the Buddha. So the Buddha is providing you guidance and wisdom in order to train your mind and awaken to the natural laws of existence. When we talk about awakening, what we're talking about is cultivation of wisdom. Because when you lack wisdom of the natural laws, you will struggle and you'll have difficulties in the world. When you're angry, when you have stress and anxiety, this is your mind struggling and having difficulties, because there are certain things about the world that you don't understand. You're just lacking certain wisdom. When we lacked wisdom of the natural law of gravity, we struggled. We had difficulties. We fell down. We hurt ourselves. We cried. We broke our skin open on our knees or our elbow. We hit our head. We broke our toys. And we really struggled with this natural law of gravity, because this natural law was affecting us, whether we were aware of it or not. And when we lacked wisdom of that natural law, we made unwise decisions, and it produced unwholesome results, or unwholesome karma, or some people refer to it as karma. This karma or karma, it is cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. It's nothing mystical or magical. It's not a black cloud following you around. There's no being who's overseeing this. What it is it's when you make a wise decision, you're going to experience wholesome results, or wholesome karma. And when you make unwise decisions, you'll experience unwholesome results, or unwholesome karma. So in the teachings of the Buddha, what he's guiding you towards is to awaken to these natural laws so that you can make wiser decisions that then produce wholesome results in your life. By the time you get to enlightenment, you're only making wise decisions, and it's producing more and more wholesome results in your life. So the natural laws that the Buddha taught about, they're affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. And just like with the natural law of gravity, where you awoke to that wisdom, and now you make wise decisions related to the natural law of gravity, you can ride bicycles, you can get on airplanes, you can climb ladders, where when you were younger and you lacked wisdom of this natural law, you couldn't do those things. But now, since you have wisdom of this natural law, you can do those things with ease. So the same thing is true about these natural laws that the Buddha taught, that if your mind is unawakened to them, you're going to experience difficulties and struggles in the world, in your relationships, with the condition of your own mind, at work, in your professional environment. You will struggle and have challenges. And that anger and the sadness and the frustration, that's all there showing you that your mind hasn't yet awakened to this wisdom yet. So what the Buddha is teaching you here is he's teaching you in this particular discourse that existence is something that he doesn't consider to be desirable. And what he's talking about is existence in the cycle of rebirth. He teaches this continuous cycle of rebirth, that we're born over and over and over and over again until we cultivate enough wisdom to escape out of this cycle of rebirth. Now, as you heard me mention, nothing in the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief, including the cycle of rebirth. This is something that you can independently verify. Right now, you might not have the wisdom to understand how to independently verify it, and that's okay, because that's where you are today. But by the time you study throughout our programs, you cultivate the wisdom to be able to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. In volume 11 of our book series, In chapter 105, there's details of how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. It's not something you usually do when you first get started on the path because you're active trying to develop your foundation in the core teachings of the Buddha, like the Eightfold Path, meditation training, the 5 precepts, things like this. You're really focused on uprooting those pollutions out of the mind, where understanding the cycle of rebirth is something that you would need on the path to enlightenment, but it's usually not something you do right at the beginning. I usually suggest students to set it to the side and then focus on the core central teachings, because what happened in the past, it's in the past. It doesn't matter right now. And what may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. It doesn't matter. What matters is right now, you experience anger, sadness, frustration. You get annoyed. You have all these other discontent feelings, stress and anxiety, and you'd like to get rid of those. And the way that you do that is focus on the core central teachings. So that's what I suggest for students to do when they first get started. But eventually, you're going to need to understand the cycle of rebirth. And I'll just give you a couple of things to think about now related to the cycle of rebirth to show you how you can independently verify this. Because right now, you're probably believing that you only have one life. And the only reason why is because you haven't put together the evidence to be able to see that there's actually a cycle of rebirth, that you keep being reborn over and over and over again. Right now, you might not remember your past lives, but as you're learning and practicing these teachings, as you're uprooting the pollution out of your mind, you might actually have memories from your past lives. And if you start having these memories and you don't realize that that's exactly what they are, it could really shake you up. You might have vivid memories of being murdered, and you know that wasn't in this life because you're still alive, right? So if you start having these vivid memories of maybe being abused or, being murdered or things like this, it could really shake you up if you didn't realize that that's in the past, and you don't have to fear that any longer. But over time, you can clear out this pollution of your mind. You might start having these residual memories of your past lives. But let me just share a couple of things that you can see perhaps in your current life to see how the cycle of rebirth is true. Do you guys know what deja vu is? Has anybody ever experienced that? See a couple of you shaking your head. Some of you don't know. What deja vu is where you're experiencing something right now and it feels utterly familiar to you. And you know that you didn't do this in this life. This is your residual memories from your past lives that are bubbling to the surface, right? That you're here doing something, you're like, oh my goodness, I've been here before. This is so utterly familiar. And you haven't done that in this life. This is your residual memories from your past lives. And usually what we do is we just kick that to the side and we don't pay it any attention. But this is helping you to be able to see that you've existed in a previous life. Or if you've ever known anybody, or if you've ever seen a story of like a 6-year-old child who's never seen a piano a day in their life, and they walk over to a piano and they play masterful piano from the very beginning. This is someone who did this in the past, and they have residual memories of their previous lives, and they can remember how to play piano, even though they've never played it in their entire life, and they've never even seen a piano perhaps in their entire life. They can play masterful piano, right? This is that person's memories from their previous lives. There's these kinds of things and countless others. I have about 17 different things that I share in volume 11, chapter 105, to help you independently verify the cycle of rebirth. But it's in volume 11, chapter 105 for a reason, because you need to really learn all the other teachings before you really approach the understanding of the cycle of rebirth. But here in chapter 4, or volume 4, chapter 1, the Buddha is essentially saying that he doesn't praise existence in the cycle of rebirth. Because if you're in the cycle of rebirth, when you're born, you're going to experience sickness, aging, and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. As long as you're born, you're going to experience this lack of wisdom because you don't have the wisdom of the path to enlightenment, which means you need to cultivate that in this life. And as long as you're being born, you're going to experience sickness, aging, and death, which are 3 really challenging things for someone to deal with in the unenlightened state. And then you're going to experience sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. And as you're learning the path to enlightenment and you're cultivating your mind, you'll get to the point where you eliminate sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. But no matter how enlightened you are, you won't eliminate sickness, aging, and death. because this is all impermanence. But the difference is that in the unenlightened state, you might really struggle when you're sick, or you see people around you, like your parents or your siblings, when they're sick or ill, or they're aging, or maybe they die. When someone close to you dies, you might really struggle with that. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll understand that all this is impermanence, that things are just changing, that you can't be permanently healthy, and the people around you can't be permanently healthy. It's not possible because of the universal truth of impermanence, that things are constantly changing, and you can't have permanent youthfulness. It's just not possible. And you can't have permanent life. It's just not possible. If there's birth, there's going to be sickness, aging, and death. Sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. So coming into the world means there's going to be suffering, essentially. Now, in order to get to enlightenment, you need to be able to see the positive side of life. And that's what we tend to focus on, the positive, encouraging side of life. And that's really wise. But if you look at it objectively, you can see that because we were born, we had to experience a certain amount of anguish and despair. And that's where oftentimes that drives somebody to be interested to learn something like the path to enlightenment. Because the path to enlightenment is the escape out of that. That's how you escape out of that misery or the sorrow or the grief or the displeasure, is you train your mind, that you can get to a point where you're just always peaceful and always joyful. But if there's birth, there's going to be this sorrow and grief and pain and displeasure. So that's why the Buddha is saying that he doesn't praise existence, because if you exist, it means you're going to suffer. But you can escape that through training your mind. And that's ultimately what the Buddha is guiding you to be able to do, is train your mind throughout all of his teachings to get to the point where you're only experiencing peace and joy. And that's the path that he laid out for you. And once you train your mind to get to enlightenment, you've removed the causes and conditions that are producing the sadness and the anger and the frustration and all those other discontent feelings, but you also have eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing rebirth. That by the time you get to enlightenment, you will no longer experience another rebirth. And that's why he's saying, hey, I don't praise this existence. Like, let's do the work now in this life in order to escape out of this and get to this peaceful and joyful mental state. So if you got to enlightenment when you're 20 years old or 30 or 40 or 50 or whatever age, you'll live for the rest of your life with that peaceful and joyful mental state. It's a permanent mental state. It's impossible for an enlightened being to experience anger or frustration or agitation or annoyance or any of those other discontent feelings that I mentioned. The stress, the anxiety, the guilt, the shame, the fear, the loneliness, the boredom, resentment, hostility, bitterness, any of this, even a slightly irritated mood or a grumpy mood or a bad mood, they don't experience that. And that's what you experience as a result of having trained the mind. So this is what the Buddha is explaining here in this short little thing, is that, hey, existence isn't desirable. Let's do the work in this life in order to escape out of this existence, so that now you can get to this peaceful and joyful mental state for the rest of your life. You'll still be experiencing that. And then you know that you're not coming back to experience birth, aging, sickness, and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair over and over and over again. So do you guys have any questions on this, either here at the temple or anyone online? Remember, if you could use the microphones here and online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So anything you guys would like to ask? Okay, I'm going to check online here because I don't see any questions here at the temple. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. Okay, so let's go to the next chapter. This is chapter 2. Is there someone who would like to read this one? Sometimes the unenlightened mind is very shy, right? This is part of the discontentedness. The mind wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. And if you're not being perceived that way, you kind of feel shy. So one of the ways to break through this is to actually put your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, right? If you actually pick up a microphone and start reading, you'll see that nobody's going to hurt you. You're not going to get harmed, and you can actually eliminate your shyness. But if you just stay and kind of hold on, you won't actually eliminate it because you're not putting the mind in that situation. So if you guys would like to practice the teachings of the Buddha a little bit, you put your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. Because what the mind's going to want to do is it's going to want to avoid things. And it thinks that solves the problem. But it doesn't, because you still hold on in your mind. You're still holding on, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. So if you just put your mind in that situation, you'll actually feel a little bit uncomfortable. But then afterwards, you're like, wow, that wasn't so bad. I could do that again. No problem. Yeah, we got 2 now. Look at that. Yeah, come on up. Get some microphones here. You can take them back to your seat. And then, so since 2 of you volunteered, one person can do this one, and then the next one can do another one. This is how you practice and get past these pollutions of mind. Not yet.
Actually, that's
Perfect.
loud. I have a question about the last section.
Sure.
I haven't done a whole lot of study into Buddhism. It's new to me.
Okay.
But one thing that I don't understand is, besides them being uncomfortable, I don't understand why discontented emotions are bad. Like, because the way that I understand it is that things like anger or sadness or loneliness, they act as a motivation to change your current state to be in a more desirable state, I guess. If you're angry, it's a motivation to fix whatever it is that made you angry. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand. This is a common question that people ask. So I don't think about these discontent feelings as being bad, so to speak, but they're undesirable for sure. And the reason why is because your mind is shaken up. What the mind does is it forms these conditioned feelings that based on some condition, you'll be happy. But then that happiness is temporary because it arises, it changes, and it fades away. And then you'll experience the painful feelings like anger, sadness, and frustration. And when your mind's shaken up with this discontentedness, it's the mind's uncalm. And when you have an uncalm mind, then you're going to have a lack of mindfulness or awareness of mind. When you have a lack of awareness of mind, you're going to have a lack of concentration. And when you have a lack of concentration, it's then going to lead to unwise decisions. And now when you make unwise decisions, it's going to produce unwholesome results in your life. So for example, using the anger, whenever you've been angry, you've had that lack of mindfulness, you had that lack of concentration, you had this lack of ability to access your wisdom, and now you might have been bitter and harsh and hostile to your mom or dad or brothers or sisters or your coworkers, and now you damage your relationships and you experience these unwholesome results. So as long as you allow your mind to continue to form conditioned feelings, it'll be uncalm, you'll lack mindfulness, you'll lack concentration, you'll lack wisdom, you'll make unwise decisions, and you'll experience these unwholesome results or these unwholesome karma. But conversely, if you can maintain your calmness, you'll have mindfulness or awareness of mind, you'll have concentration, you'll be able to access your wisdom, and now you can make wise decisions in the world and experience exclusively wholesome results. That by the time you get to enlightenment, you're only experiencing wholesome karma or wholesome results. So this is what you would like to be able to get to, but as long as you have conditioned feelings, you won't be able to do that. So for example, if the mind sees that it's sunny outside, it'll be happy, but that sun is impermanent. So that means your happiness is impermanent, that as soon as it rains, you'll be sad or frustrated or irritated. Or if you get so happy when your bank account is here, when your bank account goes here, you'll be sad or frustrated or irritated, right? Or say your mom calls you and says, hey, I heard you got a new flat. I heard you got a new apartment or a condo. I'm going to come visit you. This is going to be great. I'll come see you. And you're like, oh, so excited, Mom. Come over. I'm going to make you some food. This is going to be such a great time. And this is on Tuesday. Well, Friday, she calls you up and says, hey, I'm sorry, I can't come. Something's changed. And now you get angry, because you were so excited that mom was coming, based on the condition that mom's coming, and you have this longing, yearning to see mom, you got so excited. But now when things changed, when you got this impermanence, your mind moved to this anger and frustration. And now you might be bitter and harsh and hostile with mom. So you don't need this anger. You don't need this frustration. What you need is you need to eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments, that when mom says, hey, I'm going to come visit you, you're like, sweet mom, this will be fun. I'm going to make that favorite dish that you like. We're going to have a great time. Be wonderful to see you, or whatever you say, right? And then she calls you on Friday and she's like, hey, I can't come. So sorry. No worries, mom. I understand. Take care of whatever you need to take care of. I'll see you another time. You're always welcome. Right? And now you can maintain your peacefulness and your calmness rather than being bitter and harsh and hostile towards mom, because the anger that you're experiencing isn't coming from mom. All that mom did, she just changed her plans. That's impermanence. That's just the change. Everything around you is change. But if you crave and you cling and you hold on, wanting things to be a certain way, you can only be happy when you get things your way. When you don't get things your way, you get angry or frustrated. This is called conditional feelings. So the anger, the sadness, the frustration, right now you might be using it for motivation to see that something's wrong going on in your life and you need to change it. But what's wrong is inside the mind, or I don't think about it as wrong, but what's plaguing your mind is inside your own mind. But what the mind does in the unenlightened state with its lack of wisdom is it'll perceive the problem as being external. It'll think that mom's causing me to be angry. And now what the mind does is you'll push people away, or you'll push the situation away. You might have done this in your life with your friends or family. When you experience painful feelings, you might have pushed people away, thinking that that's going to solve your anger, but it didn't, because you see that you still get annoyed, you still get frustrated, you still get agitated. So when you push away, this is called aversion, where you're pushing a situation away or you're pushing the person away. Or the next thing you might do with a lack of wisdom of what the real cause of the problem is you might put your expectations on someone, try to control them and get them to do things your way. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards them through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And now you're really damaging your relationships. So in all three of these situations where you're pushing people away, or you're being bitter, harsh, and hostile to people, or you're putting your expectations on people, you can't live harmoniously with all beings. This is why you might have had broken relationships over and over and over and over again. And we'll tend to blame the problems that you experience on other people. This is what the mind tends to do with its lack of wisdom. But when you can see that your problems are actually within your own mind, and you actually start solving this through applying the tools and the techniques of the Buddha, you'll be able to get to the point where you can see the real problem is within your own mind. And now you can skillfully work with this and you can eliminate it. And you can get to a point where all your relationships are harmonious. So those discontent feelings just get in the way of you having harmonious relationships, fulfilling relationships, satisfying and sustaining relationships. It gets in the way of your personal and professional development as an individual. But you can use them in the unenlightened state to be able to see the areas that you need to improve. Because if you get angry that mom isn't coming over to see you, that's an indication to you that, hey, you're attached to mom, you're attached to this opportunity to see mom, and you need to eliminate that. So while they can be like a kind of like a red light on the dashboard of your car to alert you that something's wrong, you need to be able to see what's truly wrong is not external. What's causing you difficulties is within your own mind. And then once you see that and you apply the techniques to eliminate it, then maybe you got angry the first time, but now maybe it happens again and you don't get angry the next time because you see what the real problem was and you actually solved it within your own mind. So by the time you get to enlightenment, there's no anger, no frustration, no irritation, or any of those things.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Great question. I saw some other people pick up mics. I think there's more questions around. Yes, ma'am.
You did some chanting at the very beginning before we started meditating, and I was just wondering what that was and what the purpose of it is.
Sure. Yeah, I explained that. You might not have heard it at the beginning when I don't know when you came in, but one of the things that I shared is that these chants were created during the lifetime of the Buddha, not necessarily these chants, but chanting itself was used during the lifetime of the Buddha as a way to commit the teachings to memory that he taught orally. So when the students would come together about every 2 weeks, they would recite his teachings, and that would help them to commit it to their memory, because things weren't written down during his lifetime, because the technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world 2,500 years ago. So today we do chanting as a way to ease the mind into meditation and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was used in order to commit the teachings to memory. So there isn't anything mystical or magical. There isn't any rites or rituals or ceremony. It's not prayer or anything like that. It's just to really ease the mind into meditation, cultivating mindfulness and concentration and getting more benefit out of the meditation. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was used to commit teachings to memory. But we have books and audiobooks, videos, podcasts. We have things like that nowadays that we don't need to chant in order to commit the teachings to memory.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
It seems to me that it is very difficult to accumulate enough wisdom during my current life to escape from the rebirth. And we don't have our memory of previous experience of our past lives as well. How can we how can we accumulate, or how can we practice to getting closer to the stage when we can really escape from the rebirth?
Sure. What you need to do is you need to have access to the true teachings of the Buddha, and you need to have a dedicated teacher. And it's always you that's doing the work. It's your own journey to enlightenment. You need to maintain the responsibility to get to enlightenment. So you're not a follower or a devotee or anything like this. You are your own independent practitioner working your way towards enlightenment. And a teacher is kind of like a tour guide. We're providing you the guidance that you need and kind of showing you the things that you need to learn in order to be able to get to enlightenment. So this whole book series that I share, it's the original words of the Buddha, and you can get it for free by downloading it from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon. So all the programs and courses and retreats that we have, you can learn here, but you can also learn from anywhere in the world because we live stream our classes, and you can ask questions and everything. You can even get personal guidance where you sit down with me either in person or through online, through Zoom, where not only can you learn in the classes and through your books and all those kinds of things, but certain situations that you're having in your life where you need to sit down with somebody and talk about the teachings and how to apply them to your life, you have somebody that's dedicated to be able to help you. So you would like to gradually be learning with the books, gradually be learning in the courses, not believing any of the teachings, but learning, investigating, and examining, reflecting to independently verify, and then practicing the teachings, integrating them into your life. And part of what you're integrating into your life is the meditation, but you need much more than just meditation to be able to get to enlightenment. Oftentimes people aren't studying with the original words of the Buddha. There's over 500 million people who consider themselves practitioners of the teachings of the Buddha, but very few people are studying with the original words of the Buddha. I've visited over 200 temples in my lifetime, and I've only ever been to one temple that studies with the original words of the Buddha. Now, that can sound really strange, particularly for somebody coming from a Christian background, if any of you guys come from a Christian background or a Muslim background, because there's just one book. There's the Bible. Well, inside the Bible, there's, I think, 66 books inside the Bible, but it's just one book, essentially. But the teachings of the Buddha are in 45 large volumes like this. So the average person doesn't even have access to this because it's very costly to print it out and actually have access to it. But with modern technology, we've been able to consolidate it and then make it available for free online. So if you get access to the first book, either downloading it or those other methods that I mentioned, and you slowly make your way through reading it, and then you attend our classes, like the foundational classes, on Sundays and Wednesdays or any of the other courses and retreats, you can gradually learn and cultivate your wisdom, and you'll be able to see that it's working. I've had some students that in short as 2 days that have been studying with me, they've seen significant improvement. There's this course that I teach called Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment, where it's a 5-day course. And I've had students come in on like Wednesday, the 3rd day, and they said, David, I got an email this morning that would have normally shaken me up and I would have been so upset, but I understood it and I didn't get upset. And I was able to reply kindly and politely, where in the past I wouldn't have been able to do that. And they noticed just in as short as 2 days. So I suspect that you haven't been learning with the original words of the Buddha, and you haven't been practicing with the original words of the Buddha, because if somebody is, they'll be able to see that their wisdom is consistently improving. That if you're learning with me, that the students who learn with me, they experience improvement pretty readily because they're studying with the original words, they have guidance, they have all the support that they need, but they've got to do the work to be able to do it. And then slowly but surely, as you're cultivating your wisdom with the original words of the Buddha, you'll see that you're making progress. That's one of the beautiful things about the teachings of the Buddha, that because it's not believe, that you'll see the improvement. That there's certain situations where you know that you get angry and sad or frustrated or agitated. You'll experience those exact same things, but your mind won't be experiencing the anger and the frustration. And you'll know like, whoa, this is actually working. And that's the beauty of the teachings of the Buddha, that because you're learning now, reflecting now, and practicing now, you see the results now, right? You don't have to believe a bunch of things and then wait until you die to figure out if you've actually believed properly or not, that you're actually seeing the results now. Mm-hmm. Any other questions you guys have? No? Okay. So I think somebody was going to volunteer to read this next one. So if you guys would like to read this next one, whoever was volunteering, you guys are welcome to read it. Okay, yeah. I think your mic's not on yet. Your mic's not on yet. Once the lights come on, it just takes like a second or two to engage.
Hello.
There you go. Perfect.
Just in case, I would like to tell in advance because I may not know the right pronunciation.
It's
so
okay.
I just do it.
There's not just one way to pronounce a word. There's multiple ways.
One who is engaged is unliberated. One who is disengaged is liberated. Monks, one who is engaged is unliberated. One who is disengaged is liberated. Consciousness, monks, while standing, might stand engaged with form, based upon form, established upon form, with a sprinkling of excitement. It might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Or consciousness, while standing, might stand engaged with feeling, based upon feeling, established upon feeling, with a sprinkling of excitement. It might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Or consciousness, while standing, might stand engaged with perceptions, based upon perceptions, established upon perception, with a sprinkling of excitement. It might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Or consciousness, while standing, might stand engaged with volitional formations, choices, or decisions, based upon volitional formations, established upon volitional formations, with a sprinkling of excitement. It might come to growth, increase, and expansion. Monks, though someone might say, separated from form, separated from feeling, separated from perception, separated from volitional formation, I will make known the coming and going of consciousness, its passing away and rebirth, its growth, increase, and expansion is impossible. Monks, If a monk has abandoned desire for the form aggregate, with the abandoning of craving, the basis is cut off. There is no support for the establishing of consciousness. If he has abandoned desire for the feeling aggregate, for the perception aggregate, for the volitional formations, choices or decisions aggregate, for the consciousness aggregate, with the abandoning of craving, the basis is cut off. There is no support for the establishing of consciousness. When that consciousness is unestablished, not coming to growth, non-generative, the mind is liberated. By being liberated, the mind is steady. By being steady, the mind is content. By being content, one is not agitated. Being unagitated, one personally attains Nibbana, enlightenment. One understands destroyed is birth. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of existence.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what the Buddha is saying here is one who is engaged is unliberated. One who is disengaged is liberated. What he's talking about, liberated or unliberated, is he's talking about the quality of your mind. If the mind is liberated, it's free of strong feelings. That's what liberation means. It means freedom. If it's unliberated, that means it's bound up. It's still experiencing these strong feelings where the mind's getting angry and frustrated and agitated or annoyed. That's an unliberated mind. But a mind that's liberated or free, it's no longer experiencing those things. So like right now, your mind might not be free. If somebody said something degrading or disparaging about this body or the way this body looks or something else, you might get angry. Your mind's not free. It's just a matter of somebody saying something to you and then boom, you get angry right away and you get frustrated. Now you're dealing with those strong emotions. But by the time you get to enlightenment, it doesn't matter. Somebody could say something about this body. It doesn't affect you, right? So this is a liberated mind where it's free from these strong feelings. And what he's describing here is engaged versus disengaged. This is another way to explain craving, desire, attachment, or clinging, that the Buddha typically talks about it in this way, that he talks about this craving, this desire, this clinging, how the mind holds on, that when you're holding on, when you have longing, yearning, and you get what you want, you'll get happy, but when you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings like anger and sadness. So if the mind is engaged, meaning it's holding on, it's unliberated, that you're going to experience these strong feelings. But if the mind is disengaged, meaning that you're able to let go, then your mind is liberated. Because think back to that boyfriend or girlfriend that you guys were together and you felt really happy and excited when you guys were together. But when you guys broke up, you might have felt angry or frustrated, or you might have felt lonely or bored. That's because your mind was engaged. You were holding on. You were wanting this person to be permanent in your life. You might think that it was your love that was causing that, but it wasn't love. Love is a genuine interest to see all beings be well. What was causing your mind to be angry or lonely or bored is that you were holding on, you were engaged, you were clinging, you were wanting this relationship to be permanent, when in reality, everything around you is impermanent. So this is what the Buddha is talking about in general in this particular discourse. But he goes into detail here and he talks about something called the 5 aggregates. This is the form, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, and then a consciousness. These are the 5 things that make a living being a living being. These are like the 5 criteria or the 5 elements or the 5 collections. And you can independently verify this, that a living being is going to have physical form. You have physical form, right? Then a living being is going to have feelings. There's certain feelings that are going through the mind. Then there's certain perceptions. What a perception is your views and opinions about the world. You look out at the world and you have certain views and opinions. And then there's volitional formations, which are choices and decisions. Essentially, a living being is going to have free will. They can make their own choices and decisions. And then there's a consciousness or a mind, right? So there's form, physical form. There's feelings like pleasant, unpleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant. Then there's perceptions, views and opinions about the world. Then there's volitional formations, which are choices and decisions. And then there's a consciousness, which is the mind. And the reason why the Buddha is talking about these 5 aggregates is because as a human being, you will tend to cling to these. You will tend to hold on to them. Like, for example, this physical body. You might cling to this physical body. And now when you see a pimple or a mole, or you see a gray hair, or you get a little bit extra fat here or there, or you might spill something on your clothes, you're going to experience discontentedness because you're clinging to this body, wanting it to be a certain way permanently, not realizing that this body is impermanent. So if you cling to this body and you think that this is who you are, now when you see a pimple or a wrinkle or a mole, you'll see it in the mirror and you'll get all shaken up by that. Or if you spill something on your clothing, you might get embarrassed in a social situation. But you can get to the point where you're not clinging to this body, wanting it to be permanent, of course, making wise decisions to keep it as healthy as possible, but not clinging to it, understanding that it is impermanent. But if you're engaged with this body, with this physical form, that means you're clinging to it and your mind's not going to be liberated. And then the same thing with feelings. You might cling to these feelings. You might say, I am angry, or I am frustrated, or I am irritated. Well, I am not angry. What's really experienced is that your mind is experiencing anger. There's no I here. This body isn't you. This mind isn't you. But what the mind will tend to do is you might say, I am angry, or I am frustrated. But in reality, it's just your mind is experiencing anger. And that is an impermanent situation. But if you cling to that anger, you might think that, oh my goodness, this is going to last forever. Or this stress or this anxiety, you might be really plagued with this, thinking that this stress is going to last forever. But if you understand that these feelings are impermanent and you can transform your mind and get away from them, then you don't have to feel so miserable when you're experiencing these painful feelings. Or like your perceptions. These are your views and opinions about the world. You might have certain views and opinions that you cling to and you hold on to. And then when you're in a conversation with somebody and they disagree with you, you might be adamantly trying to convince them that your opinion is correct and their opinion is wrong. Right? And now you advocate for people to agree with you. And this is where people might argue and be really upset with each other and kind of fight to death, kind of like an animal fighting to its death, right? So if you cling to your views and opinions, or if you're engaged with your views and opinions and you want everybody else to agree with you, you're not going to have a very peaceful life, because there's never going to be a situation where everyone agrees with you. Because of impermanence, everybody's going to think different ways. Everyone's going to have different opinions and views. But if you're clinging to your views and opinions, your perceptions, then you're going to find that you're going to have discontentedness when someone disagrees with you. Or your volitional formations. This is your choices and decisions. If you cling to these, you're going to experience discontentedness. So for example, when you're on your way to Thailand, maybe like 3 months before or 6 months before, you might have had plans to come to Thailand and you booked your plane tickets and you got so excited. I'm going to Thailand. Oh, it's going to be so fun. I can't wait to get there. We're going to get all this food. We're going to get Thai massages. We're going to see all these cool things. Oh, it's going to be so fun. You might have been at work and you might have been daydreaming about your time to go to Thailand. You just couldn't wait to get there, right? And you're holding on to this decision. And now you get to the airport and your flight's delayed or it's canceled. And you might be frustrated. You might be angry because your mind's clinging to this decision. I want to go to Thailand. And you're so excited. And now if you get to go, you're happy and you're excited. But if you can't go because your flight's delayed or canceled, now you're angry or frustrated. And this is just impermanence. That's all it is. That these planes can't be always on time. There's going to be some impermanence. There's going to be a maintenance issue. There's going to be a crew issue. There's going to be a weather issue. There's going to be some problem with these airplanes at some point. Whereas if you cling to your decision to come to Thailand and you're holding on to it, if you're engaged with it, then it's only a matter of time before you experience difficulties because your mind's going to become discontent. So you'd like to get to the point where you understand like, hey, I'm booking my flights to Thailand. This is going to be a great time, going to be really fun. But all the while, you know you're going to experience some impermanence along the way. Something's going to happen. Your bags are going to get lost. Your taxi cab's not going to be there. Something's going to happen along the way that you're going to have some impermanence. You're going to come back to your hotel. The maid hasn't made your bed, right? The housekeeper hasn't come through and made your bed, where you might really want them to make your bed every single day. And when they don't do it, you might get angry or frustrated. That's because the mind wants what it wants, right? And if it gets what it wants, it gets happy. And if it doesn't get what it wants, it gets angry or sad or frustrated. So the Buddha is teaching you not to cling to your decisions. Understand that these things are going to change. Because if you make a decision, say 6 months ago, and now you're at the point where it's time to implement this decision, there's been a whole lot of change. And if you cling to your decision, you might be implementing an unwise decision. Whereas if you update your decision, you're like, hey, there's been all this change. Let me change my decision. Let me not just hold on to my decision and just implement an unwise decision. Let me change what I'm doing here. This is what you would ultimately like to get to. Then there's the consciousness itself, where you might be clinging to this. This is like your self-identity, like I am Chinese, or I am American, or I am German, or I am Canadian, or I am Brazilian. Any of this I am, this identity, like your job, your occupation, your culture, your ethnicity, maybe your sexual orientation, any of these kinds of things that you cling to. When somebody says something agreeable to you and they say, wow, all Americans are lovely and kind and friendly. I've never heard this before, but someone might actually say this, right? They might say something like that. And if they say something like that and you consider yourself to be American, you might be so excited because they're talking about me, right? But now it's only a matter of time before someone says, Americans are blah, 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 or Chinese people are blah, 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 blah. They might be talking negative. Whereas if you identify with that's who you are as a person, you'll be angry, you'll be frustrated. Or maybe you have a job or occupation, like I am a police officer. And now when you're doing that job, you feel great, you feel whole. But then maybe you get injured or you get fired and you can't do that job anymore. Well, now when you're maybe doing another job, maybe you're like a food server. You're working at a restaurant. Your mind is identifying with, I am a police officer, but now you're a food server. And your mind doesn't like that. You don't feel whole. You feel incomplete. You feel like you don't even know who you are anymore. Sometimes people come to Thailand in search of themselves. They'll say, I need to go find myself. I need to go find my true self. I'm going to go on this journey. I'm going to unplug from the world for a year or two, and I'm going to go find myself. Well, you're not going to find yourself in Thailand because it doesn't exist. You might find new friends, you might find new hobbies, you might find new activities, a new job or something like this, but you're not going to find yourself because it doesn't exist. This body isn't you. These feelings are not you. These views and opinions, these perceptions, those aren't you. Your choices and decisions, that's not you. So if you made unwise choices in the past, that's not who you are. And this mind, this self-identity, that's not you. It's not who you are. So the Buddha is teaching you to not cling to these things, because as long as you cling to these things and identify them as who you are, you're going to feel frustrated and angry and irritated in these kinds of situations. Like, for example, say you were addicted to drugs or alcohol in the past, and you identify with, I am an alcoholic, or I am an addict. Now, in the present moment, you're going to feel guilty or shameful, where you can just realize those were decisions I made, and they're in the past. It doesn't define who I am today. Right? So the Buddha is teaching you to let these things go and don't define who you are as a person through these things. And this is where you can get liberated, because having gotten liberated, what he's saying down here is that the mind is steady. The mind is content. It's not agitated, that you've attained enlightenment. You'll go 1 year, 2 years, 3 years where you won't have any discontent feelings. There's no anger, there's no frustration, there's no irritation, none of those feelings. And you'll know that your mind's actually enlightened because you've experience this elongated period of time where there's no discontent feelings. And then when you're eliminating that and you've experienced the peace and joy in your mind, you'll also understand destroyed is birth, because there's other teachings that you need to learn to be able to see that when you eliminate the causes and conditions that are producing anger and frustration, you've also eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing rebirth. So it's not in this teaching. It's another teaching called dependent origination, where you can actually learn that. And once you liberate your mind and got into enlightenment, you'll know that you're never going to be reborn ever again, because you've lived the holy life. What had to be done has been done. You've trained your mind. You did what you need to do in this life. You've cultivated the full wisdom of these natural laws. You don't need to hold on to this world anymore. But as long as you don't understand the wisdom of this world, you're going to keep coming back over and over. But when you've done what you had to do, you're out of here. It's kind of like, peace out, brother. I'll see you later. I'm not coming back anymore. See ya, right? And you're just gone. Because then there's no more for this state of existence. You've escaped the cycle of rebirth. And your mind will be completely peaceful for the rest of your life. And you'll have the assurance that you're not coming back to experience it over and over and over again. Okay, so that's what the Buddha's saying here. And then a little bit more detail here. He's saying up here, he's saying, though someone might say separated from form, separated from feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, in consciousness, it's passing away in rebirth, that they're going to know the ending of the cycle of rebirth. And he's saying that's impossible, right? He's saying as long as your mind is clinging and you're only separated from these things, it's impossible to know that you've reached the end of the cycle of rebirth. It's through abandoning the desire. It's not through just being separated, that you actually have to eliminate the clinging in the mind. And this is something that relies on a lot of other teachings. So you might have understood a certain part of what I'm sharing here, but there's other parts that you really need to investigate to fully understand what the Buddha is explaining here. So do you guys have any questions on this chapter? Yeah? Yeah, feel free to get a mic.
Is it working?
Sure is.
Yeah, by getting disengaged, you feel less the undesirable feelings, but engagement also sometimes make you more happy, feel more joy, more positive feelings. And in the end, the teaching also describes that your mind gets content. My question, I guess, is by getting more disengaged, do you also lose more the intense feeling of joy and happiness, like the positive feelings? Because I can imagine that's also like a side effect of it.
Yeah, so what you're experiencing right now and that you're referring to as happiness is conditional happiness. That if certain conditions are met, then you will be happy. And this type of happiness is only temporary because it arises, it changes, and it fades away. That you might be happy, for example, when it's sunny outside, or happy when you get a new job, or happy when you go to Thailand. So your happiness is contingent upon something else. So if this condition is met, and this condition is met, and this condition is met, and this condition is met, now you'll be happy. So that's being engaged. What the Buddha is talking about by being disengaged, it means that you no longer forming your inner feelings based on conditions. And by the time you get to that type of happiness, this is called unconditional happiness or unconditioned joy, where you can just be joyful all the time. Because when you're engaged or you have this longing, yearning, this clinging, you can only be happy if certain conditions are met. So the amount of happiness that you can have is actually less and less and less because it's conditional. This is why people, when they get old, they're old and grumpy or old and irritable. But you don't have to be old and grumpy. You can be old and cheerful, right? You can do that. I look at Pat because he's old and cheerful. You don't mind me calling you old, right? He's 70-something years old. He's done a lot of things in his life, right? He's cheerful, right? So you can be older and you can be cheerful. But if you have a bunch of expectations in your mind, if you have a bunch of longing and yearning, you'll be old and grumpy, right? So this unconditional happiness It's something you may or may not have experienced at this point. If you've ever been somewhere where you're just like, whoa, I could stay here for the rest of my life and I don't need anything at all. I'm completely content and happy just existing here. I'll be completely happy. This is unconditional happiness. You don't need anything to be happy. Your mind's not basing its happiness on any particular thing. And when you can get to that point where you've eliminated all these cravings, desires, attachments, then you can just be happy all the time. You wake up happy, all day long you'll be happy, and then you go to sleep, you'll be happy. You'll still be happy. But if you have certain craving or clinging or this engagement that the Buddha is describing, he's just using these words a little bit different. But normally he talks about it as craving and clinging, wants and expectation, this longing, yearning. That's what's causing the unhappiness. You will get happy in those situations temporarily when you're getting what you want, but then it's going to fade away. So it's essentially undesirable. So by the time you do what the Buddha is teaching you to do, you'll be happy all the time. It'll be persistent and in the mind at all times. This is unconditional happiness.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for the very interesting teaching so far. I think my question is very similar. So I guess the question is, can I still be extra happy in the sun if I'm like already unconditional happy? Or do you have to like get rid of the extra happiness in the sun in order to receive the unconditional happiness? Because I can imagine, especially, for example, being in a relationship, the other might feel like you're indifferent to like the conditional love that I'm feeling now in my relationship. I will be very sad if my boyfriend would leave me tomorrow. And I can imagine if I come back from my trip, I think he's a bit scared for this because I told him I'm going to like the temple and he was like, oh no, what are you going to be when you get back to the Netherlands? But if I come back and I'll be like, oh, if you break up with me now, I'll still be happy because I have unconditional happiness. He might experience indifference. So how would this work in like a relationship, for example? Or shouldn't you have that kind of relationship if you're really in the enlightenment path?
Sure. When you don't have craving and clinging in your relationships, they'll go much, much, much better. Right now, when you have craving and clinging, you can only be happy when you're with that person, for example. Now, when you're with them, you feel happy, you feel great. But when you're away from them, you miss them. Or you feel lonely or bored. Or you might be frustrated that they've left and they've gone on a business trip. And now you might take out that anger on them in certain ways, kind of trying to pressure them. And now it puts strain on the relationship. Craving and clinging actually sabotages the relationship because you kind of grab it in your hand and you crush it. Because the individuals put pressure on each other because the person is like, I've got these expectations and I want you to meet them. And now the other person has expectations of you. And now you guys struggle and fight over meeting each other's expectations. But when you get to a point where you don't have craving and clinging, everything's wonderful because you're not putting your expectations on them. They're not putting their expectations on you. And your feelings and emotions aren't based on what they choose to do or what they choose not to do. Right? So like my wife, I'm married and we both practice these teachings. I have no idea where she's at right now. She's somewhere in Chiang Mai, and I know that, but I have no idea what she's doing. And that's wonderful because in the past, I used to have to know, where are you going? What are you doing? How long are you going to be there? You know, and have all these questions for her. And then I had to keep all this stuff straight in the mind. And the mind's burdened with these kinds of things. And then if something changes, you know, you're like, well, why did you do that? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? I don't need to know all that details. Just go have fun. Go have a good life, right? I'll see you when you get home tonight. Go have a good time, right? So when you're over here and you're craving and clinging in the relationship, you're going to crush it and you're going to sabotage it. But when you can just love the person as they are unconditionally, and the other person understands what unconditional love is, you can have a very satisfying and fulfilling relationship. But if you're practicing these teachings and your partner's not, it can be somewhat challenging because say you go to Thailand and your partner's like, hey, did you miss me? And you're like, no. And they're like, why? It's like, well, because I'm not attached to you. I had fun. I have fun when I'm with you, but I have fun when I'm away from you too. And I would like you to do the same thing. When you're with me, have fun. Let's enjoy. But when you're away from me, go have fun. Go enjoy. That's what you guys would like to get to. But if you're not there yet, then you'll put pressure on each other and you're only happy when you're together. And this is going to ultimately sabotage your relationship.
I have one more question. How do you differentiate from indifference, ignorance to calm?
Sure. So the unenlightened mind with its lack of wisdom can usually see two sides. It can see the craving and the clinging and the chasing after things and basing your feelings on that. You can see that. And that's sometimes what we were talking about with motivation. That's sometimes your motivation is you're chasing after more money, or you're chasing after more friends, or you're chasing after a bigger house. And if you get it, you're happy. And if you don't get it, you're sad. So an unenlightened mind understands craving to a certain degree. They don't understand the problem that it's causing them, but they understand basing their life on these cravings, desires, attachments, and chasing after things. And then the unenlightened mind can see the other side, that your mind swings to this other side where you're disengaged, but that's not what the Buddha is actually really talking about. But this is the language that people think, is that you're indifferent, that you could care less, and you're completely letting go of everything physically and mentally. That's not what the Buddha is talking about either. What he's talking about is he's talking about this middle way where you don't have indifference, but you're not chasing after things and basing your inner feelings on them either. But you have goals and you have objectives. You have an interest to accomplish certain things in the world. And you go out into the world and you make wise decisions to pursue certain goals and objectives. But you don't base your inner feelings on those things, whether you accomplish them or not. This is the beauty about this path, is that if you're setting goals right now, and if you meet your goals, you get happy. And if you don't meet your goals, you get sad or frustrated. That's not actually a true goal. That's a craving, desire, attachment masquerading as a goal. That if I get what I want, I'll be happy. And if I don't get what I want, I get sad and frustrated. What a true goal is that if you're working your way towards the goal, objective, or interest, and you get it, hey, fine. And if you don't get it, that's fine too. But you look at it and you say, okay, I'm 80% of the way towards my goal. What should I do here? Should I extend my timeline to give me more time to meet the goal? Should I put more resources on this in order to allow me to be able to accomplish this goal? Or, hey, 80% is quite nice. I'll just stay with 80%. I don't need 100% of this goal. This is actually perfect. I'll just stick with this, right? But oftentimes people lock in these goals, and then when they don't get it, they feel angry or frustrated. Or if they do get it, they get happy. So this is craving, desire, attachment, or the mind swings to the other side and just is indifferent. But what the Buddha is teaching you is to wisely walk towards your goals, objective, or interest, but don't form your feelings on whether or not you accomplish them or not. And now this is where you can just work towards everything. Because the Buddha, he had a goal. His goal was for his teachings to reach the entire world. That's what his interest. But he knew it wasn't going to be during his lifetime, because his language that he spoke, his ability to travel, the ability of the teachings to spread throughout the world, it wasn't going to happen during his lifetime. But now we have that ability to travel. We have an international language. We have the internet. We can share his teachings far and wide. His teachings are going to reach the entire world over time. And that was a goal that he was working towards. But he wasn't craving it. He wasn't longing, yearning for it, because that goal was never going to be accomplished during his actual life. So if he formed his inner feelings on whether he got this goal or not, he would never be happy, because it wouldn't actually occur during his life. So he needed to work towards this goal, fully realizing it wasn't going to happen during his lifetime. So there's certain goals that you can work towards, and then just gradually work towards them. Don't be indifferent and care less about what goes on in your life, but also don't be chasing after money and fame and fortune, because that's not going to make you happy. You'll get happy with those kinds of things temporarily, but then it's going to fade away. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. All right. So it's basically 10:40. We usually study 10 chapters each week.
Sorry, I still
do we have another
one
question?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So it's a question about you just mentioned more about making goals and finding yourself. I think right now I'm in the state of getting lost. I don't know what I actually want in my life, or I'm not in that mode of being engaged of something that I have something to crave towards, but I'm not in that mode of not disengaged or indifferent to everything, but I'm just in the mood of searching of what I actually want, or what will make me happy or something like that. But I'm not sure if how can I actually, is there any ways to really know what would actually make me happy, or like how is there like any like solution to this current state of mind, like being very lost, of like not sure like what would actually make me like happy, or like, yeah, I don't know how to explain this very well.
I understand what you're asking. What'll make you happy is getting to enlightenment and eliminating craving, desire, attachment. Because what you're talking about is craving, desire, attachment. You're saying, what do I need to pursue in order to make me happy? None of this external stuff is going to make you happy. You'll get happy for a temporary period, but then it'll fade away. So for example, if you're making $50,000 a year at your company right now, you might think, oh, I know what I need. I need 70,000. That'll make me happy. Well, you'll chase after that for a while and you'll get it, and then you'll be happy for a period of time, but then it'll fade away. And then you'll say, I know what I need. I need 90,000. That's what I need. And now you'll chase that. Or I know what I need. I need a new boyfriend or a girlfriend. That's what'll make me happy. Or, oh, I need a new car. So the mind will just keep chasing after these things, trying to form its happiness on something external. And you will get happy temporarily for a month or two, or a week or two, or a day or two, but it's going to ultimately fade away. But when you get rid of all of these things from your mind, where you gradually work towards your goals, objectives, and interests, you can be happy all the time. Whether you're wearing nice clothes, or you're wearing simple clothes, or you're wearing your bank accounts here, or your bank accounts here, you can maintain your happiness. So there's various things that you're going to need to do in the world in order to sustain your life and have a fulfilling and satisfying life. But if you're not also training your mind in helping your mind to understand how to live this life without craving, desire, attachment, you're never going to get to permanent happiness. So there's actually a core central teaching here that you guys haven't learned yet, because you haven't learned the foundational teachings, where there's something called the Eightfold Path. This is what you really need to learn. And I'm going to be teaching this. There's a course coming up on Monday. It's Monday through Friday. And I'm going to be teaching it on Monday morning, starting at 9 o'clock. So if you guys would like to come, if you're going to be around in town. If not, you can attend the live stream, or you can watch the recordings or read it in the books. You're going to need to know the Eightfold Path inside and out, backwards and forwards. That's what's really going to help you. That's why here we're just kind of filling in the framework where all the foundational teachings and courses and retreats is what's really going to help you to build up. So right now we're just kind of talking about a bunch of different things, but you're not seeing how it's all connected to like one central path. And that's what the foundational classes will help you to do. But there's nothing that's going to make you happy. You're going to need to eliminate that longing, yearning, and that's where the mind is then going to experience more and more happiness.
But what if I cannot find my goal of like what direction to work on?
So you will be able to find your goals, because when you have craving, desire, attachment in your mind, you will chase after like selfish desires, that the mind wants more money, or it wants a bigger house, or it wants a new boyfriend or girlfriend, and the mind chases these things. But when you get rid of these cravings, desires, attachments, you'll be able to see what you're really interested in doing in life. I'll give you an example from my life. When I was growing up and I was going through college and stuff like this, I thought what I wanted was money. So I went into IT and I started doing IT work for about 7.5 years, and I worked my way up to $150,000 a year. And I thought I was making all kinds of money, and I was making a lot of money. And then after that, I ended up opening my own business and making a lot of money through that. I was making $450,000 a year, making all kinds of money through my own business. And then I opened another business when I came here to Thailand. I was making all kinds of money. Had all the things that people said that would make you happy: cars, motorcycles, houses, all kinds of wonderful things that are material in nature. But I never was happy. I was only happy temporarily, and then the happiness would fade away. But during this period of time, as I was going through IT and I was chasing after money, I thought it was money that I wanted. But then I started opening my own company, and I opened my own company. We were doing massage and teaching people to do massage. And then when I came here to Thailand, I opened up another kind of business. Well, when I started looking at my life and what it was that I was really enjoying about life, it was helping people. Whether I was in IT, I was really enjoying helping my employees to get education and growth and develop their career. When I was doing the massage business, I really enjoyed helping people get healthy. And we were also doing education and teaching Thai massage and Buddhism as well. And then when I opened my company here in Thailand, I was actually helping people and I was enjoying helping people. And when I started looking at what would I really like to do with the rest of my life, as I was training my mind, as I was experiencing more and more improvement with the teachings of the Buddha, I was like, this is what I'd like to do the rest of my life. This is really enjoyable, to help people understand how to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state. And I've been helping people all through my life, but before there was this money thing in the way that was getting in the way of me finding what was my true interest in this life that I really was interested to do. So as long as I was chasing money, I couldn't see that what I really was interested in doing was helping people. So once I got rid of my craving for money by having attained it and having a certain amount of money back then and realizing that didn't lead to happiness, when I got rid of that craving, then the real interest of helping people could shine through. So right now, with a certain amount of pollution in your mind, you'll have a difficult time seeing what is it that I'd really like to do in this world. But when you start training your mind, you start getting rid of these pollutions, and more you're not making decisions through selfish desires, you'll be able to see what is it that I'd really like to do in this world. And right now, yeah, it can be challenging for you to see that. So that's why no matter what you're doing in life right now, you'd be really wise to train your mind in the teachings of the Buddha, get rid of those pollutions more and more so that you can see what is it that you'd really like to do so you can feel very fulfilled. Because now I don't make any money. You know, people sometimes leave donations to be able to help me buy food and stuff like that. But it's not the $450,000 or even the $150,000 that I used to make before. But I don't care about that stuff, because as long as I have food and clothing and shelter and medical care and the things that I need, that's all I really need. So I couldn't do that before, because before I was craving for money. But when I got that craving out of the way, then I was like, this is what I really enjoy. Right? I used to drive a $100,000 car. Now I drive a $2,000 motorbike, and I'm more peaceful and more joyful on my little motorbike than I was in that car. Sure, the car was more comfortable. It was much more comfortable. But this motorbike, it's just fine. I go through traffic, very little gas, can park easily. Someone scratches it, so what? Right? So you got to get to the point where you get rid of these cravings, and that's a journey. And if you learn and practice and train your mind, you'll be able to see more and more clearly what is it that you're really interested in doing in this world. And then you'll find that and you'll just thoroughly enjoy it. So essentially what the path to enlightenment is, among other things, is you're creating this ideal life for yourself. But you need the guidance of how to do that. And that's where the teachings of the Buddha come in to create this wonderful life for yourself. And as long as your mind's polluted, you'll have difficulties creating that wonderful life for yourself, because you'll be out there chasing the expensive car, the money, the boys, the girls, the bigger house, and all these other things.
Thank you.
So you said before that the mind is not you and yourself doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. So where is us?
Mm-hmm. So there is a physical body and there is a mind, and it's come together for this existence. So we call this a person. So there's a physical body, there is a mind. The combination of the two is a person. And now I'm looking at a human being. But when I look at this body and I see this being sitting here, I know that this isn't who you are as a person. So if you came in one day and your arm was amputated, doesn't affect anything. You just have less use of an arm. You just have one hand and one arm. No big deal. That's not you. That body isn't you. So there is no you there. So there is a person that is there. There is a being that is in existence, but the Buddha is teaching you not to cling to any of this and define who you are through this. So that way, when you get a little extra fat, or in my case, a lot of extra fat, then you won't identify with this as who you are as a person, because this body is going to change. Right now, you guys all look pretty young, but this is all going to change. Right? And if you identify with who you are through this body, when things change, you'll be shaken up by that. So the Buddha is not saying that there's no being in existence what he's essentially helping you to be able to see is don't cling to this body or this mind or this existence as who you are as a person. So you don't form your feelings based on these things.
So you're saying, like, as your body changes, your thoughts as well change, so your thoughts don't define you.
Exactly. Your thoughts don't define who you are. But right now, in the unenlightened state, you probably have a certain amount of unwholesome thoughts, unwise thoughts. You might judge other people. You might look down on people. You might dislike certain people because they're not meeting your expectations, right? There's certain expectations that the mind has that you maybe want people to look a certain way or talk a certain way or function a certain way. When they do things our way, the mind gets happy. And when the people don't do things your way, you might dislike them. This is a reflection of what's going on in your own mind based on your cravings, desires, attachments, your wants and expectations. So those things aren't you. That's not who you are. And you can train your mind to eliminate this, where you can get to the point where you just have love and care and kindness for everyone, even when you don't agree with them. But sometimes what we do in the unenlightened state with our lack of wisdom is we can only love people who we agree with and that they agree with us. And if this is what an individual is doing, it's not actually true love. It's what we call conditional love, even though there's no such thing as conditional love. It's like, if you do what I want, I will say I love you. But if you don't do what I want, then I don't love you anymore. This is an actual true love. So you can get to the point where you just have love and kindness for all beings. And part of that is, yes, understanding that whatever thoughts you're having, this doesn't define who you are as a person. And you can enhance your mind and you can improve your mind to the point where you're only having wholesome thoughts. And this is where you can be cheerful and bright and radiant all the time. Mm-hmm. Okay, let me see if we have any questions anywhere. Okay, so I don't see any questions anywhere. So, I teach the same class in the evenings at 9 o'clock. I do it from my home and I live stream it from there as well. And we go through 10 chapters each week. But when I come here, usually we're doing other things. We're talking about other things. So we don't always do 10 chapters here. We just go to wherever we go. And right now is basically the time where we kind of end class. Somewhere between 10:30 and 11 is where I end class. And what I'm going to do is just end by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for the wonderful discussion. It's been great to hear your questions and help you guys. If you would like to learn more, there's other courses and programs that could really help you. Like tomorrow is our group learning program. That's a really great time to kind of like be learning. It's a 7-month program where instead of being in volumes 2 through 13, like this program, we actually use volume 1. Every Sunday, I go chapter by chapter in volume 1, and over a 7-month period, we cover the entire book. And we start this every 7 months, and you can really join this program at any point. And you can get this book over there. You can get it on our website. You can get it on Amazon. You can take it and go print it yourself if you like, because the teachings of the Buddha are here to help you heal from what hurt you, so that you never need to hurt ever again. By the time you get to enlightenment, that's essentially what you're experiencing. But what's hurting you isn't external. It's actually inside your own mind. So slowly but surely, you can learn this and you can train your mind and get to this point where the mind is peaceful and joyful permanently. So Sundays and Wednesdays is great for that. Next week, we have a course Monday through Friday. It's called Experiencing the Jhanas and the 4 Stages of Enlightenment. And you can come to any part of that you like. You don't need to come to the entire course, but of course, if you're there for the whole course, you'll get more benefit, but you don't have to. Like maybe you're leaving on Wednesday, you're not even going to be here. So you're welcome to come to any part of that course that you like. And we also live stream it. So if you're not going to be here, we'll be live streaming that course. All of our courses and books and resources, even personal guidance, is available at no cost. You don't have to pay anything. I'm here to help you to learn and grow and develop on the path to enlightenment. And if you're interested in getting rid of these painful feelings, I'll teach you how to do it, and you'll be able to get to the point where you're just always peaceful and always joyful. So thank you all for joining, and perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Take care. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.